Welcome to the Mary Potter podcast. You sent us a couple of really fascinating flash fiction stories this week, and they both center around these individuals with an almost uncanny ability to see what others are really thinking or intending.
Right.
It's having this magical lens, right into those hidden corners of the human heart.
To the human heart, yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to perform a magical probe into these stories.
Okay.
Pull out, the most interesting bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And see what they tell us about power and perception and even just the human condition.
Exactly. What's immediately striking about both these narratives you shared is how they, take historical figures we think we know.
Right.
And they give them this extra layer of almost supernatural insight.
Right.
It really makes you wonder how much of their impact came from genuine, worldly skill, and how much might have been attributed to this perceived deeper understanding.
Well, let's start with the first one that you sent, the Virgin Oracle.
Okay.
This flash fiction story reimagines Queen Elizabeth I, not just as a sharp political operator,
Right.
but as someone who received prophetic visions that revealed the conspiracy swirling around her.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
The story, it paints a picture of this gift really taking hold with a very personal and profound experience. Not the expected joy of potential motherhood, but a terrifying vision of her own death upon her first bleed.
Wow.
What was your initial reaction to that premise?
I mean, the power of that opening is undeniable.
Yeah.
The flash fiction story, it immediately reframes a biological event as a moment of profound political and personal revelation for Elizabeth. It suggests that her understanding of her position shifted instantly from heir to target, fueled by these internal warnings.
Right.
If we think about the challenges facing a female ruler in that era, this alleged foresight becomes not just a gift, but a crucial survival mechanism in the narrative.
Right. And the story goes on to suggest that this prophetic knowledge heavily influenced her decision to remain unmarried.
Yeah, okay.
So her famous virginity wasn't, just a personal choice or a political maneuver.
Yeah.
But almost like a strategic imperative born from these visions.
Wow.
By not marrying, she could maintain control and play this intricate long game with these potential suitors,
Right.
weaving what the story calls a tapestry of uneasy peace. And it makes you look at a well-known aspect of her reign in a completely new light.
Absolutely. The flash fiction story makes a compelling case that her unmarried status became a significant source of her power.
Yeah.
It allowed her to avoid aligning herself with any one faction or foreign power,
Right.
maintaining a crucial independence in a very volatile period. What's interesting to consider, and thinking about your interest in these kinds of stories, is how much the belief in her unique insight, perhaps stemming from her unmarried state, might have influenced her rivals and allies alike.
Interesting.
Did they perceive her as having a strategic advantage simply because she seemed to possess this unusual self-control?
It's a really good question because, here's where it gets really intriguing.
Okay.
The story emphasizes that these visions weren't crystal clear pronouncements from on high, but rather fragments, gnawing uncertainties.
Right.
A sudden flash of crimson, a distinct scent of almonds.
Interesting.
It wasn't full omniscience, but more like a heightened sensitivity.
Right.
A constant subconscious scanning for patterns that echoed her precarious situation.
Okay.
So this makes her seem, less like a passive recipient of fate,
Right.
and more like an active interpreter of subtle clues.
That's a critical point that the flash fiction story makes.
Yeah.
It suggests that her gift, if we can even call it that, might have acted as a catalyst for her already sharp intellect and political instincts. Instead of simply knowing what was to come, she was perhaps hyper-aware of the present,
Right.
noticing minute details and undercurrents that others overlook, and interpreting them through the lens of this perceived foreboding.
I see.
This raises a fascinating question for you to consider.
Yeah.
How much of her renowned success was due to an actual supernatural ability, and how much to an incredibly astute mind working in overdrive due to this constant sense of impending danger.
Oh, and those famous delays and hesitations in her decision-making.
Right.
The story reframes what some historians have seen as indecisiveness as a deliberate tactic.
Right.
A weaponization of time.
Interesting.
By appearing to waver, she could lure the impatient into revealing their true intentions and making, fatal mistakes.
I see.
It wasn't weakness, but a calculated move informed by these fragmented warnings that she was receiving.
That's a very clever interpretation presented in the flash fiction story.
Yeah.
If you consider the immense pressures on a monarch in that era, the constant threat of plots and assassinations,
right.
this heightened vigilance, even if not strictly prophetic, would have been an incredibly valuable survival strategy.
Yeah.
It offers a compelling alternative lens through which to view her often cautious approach to governance.
And the story provides a really vivid example with the priest, who was smuggling a crucifix. His exposure wasn't attributed to, divine intervention directly, but rather to Elizabeth's understanding that prophecies can be self-fulfilling with the right nudge.
I see.
So it's that subtle manipulation, the poisoning to induce a terrified confession during, a clandestine meeting.
Right.
It paints a picture of a queen actively shaping events based on her insights, whether divinely granted or shrewdly constructed.
What's particularly striking about that example in the flash fiction story you sent is the way it blends the seemingly supernatural, the initial premonition, with very practical, even Machiavellian strategic action.
Right.
So the prophecy itself doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah.
It provides Elizabeth with the impetus and the framework to manipulate the situation to achieve her desired outcome.
And then, of course, we have the Spanish Armada.
Of course, yeah.
The story suggests that the defeat of the Armada wasn't just a matter of English naval prowess or luck, but a storm seemingly willed by destiny. Yet Elizabeth, understood that even destiny could be influenced. So her visions of defeat were strategically leaked to sap enemy morale.
Interesting.
Pushing them into this reckless gamble.
Wow.
So the fire shifts and the eventual retreat weren't just tactical maneuvers, but masterstrokes built on exploiting the enemy's fear.
Interesting.
A weapon she wielded with, considerable skill, according to the story.
This really highlights the power of perception on a massive scale.
Right.
Whether Elizabeth genuinely foresaw the Armada's demise or simply understood the profound impact of psychological warfare.
Right.
The belief that she possessed this almost mystical foresight could have had a tangible and significant impact on the actions and morale of both the English and the Spanish forces.
Right.
It adds another layer to understanding that pivotal historical event.
Her court, according to the story, became almost like a viper's nest of her own creation.
Wow.
With factions deliberately encouraged and stoked. Each emerging plot was carefully traced, and traitors weren't simply executed. Sometimes they were turned into double agents. It was a constant, intricate game of anticipation. Not necessarily based on a divine gift, but on a ruthless understanding of ambition, born from her own early experiences of vulnerability and threat.
This paints a picture of a ruler who isn't just reacting to dangers, but actively cultivating them to better understand them, control them, and ultimately neutralize them. The idea that her perceived insight allowed her to manipulate these complex courtly dynamics is a very compelling aspect of the narrative you've shared.
And ultimately, the flash fiction story concludes that her most potent weapon wasn't any actual prophetic ability, but the carefully constructed myth that she built around herself, Gloriana, touched by something otherworldly, The visions, the victories that seem to come at just the right moment.
Right.
The aura of unshakable certainty. It created this image of like terrifying unpredictability. Elizabeth the woman might have been vulnerable, but Elizabeth the myth was seemingly unassailable.
The story ends by suggesting that perhaps her true genius lay not in the reality of prophecy, but in the masterful manipulation of the illusion of it.
Right.
This allowed her to not only navigate the treacherous political landscape of her time, but also to shape the destiny of a nation and her own enduring legacy.
Yeah.
It leaves you, as the listener, pondering the fascinating interplay between perceived power and actual power in shaping the course of history.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's turn our magical probe
to
the second flash fiction story you sent,
Okay.
The Mind Impaler.
Okay.
A much darker and more chilling look at Vlad Tepes.
Sure.
Here, his fearsome reputation isn't solely based on his, notorious cruelty, but on a terrifying, almost magical ability to read the minds of those around him.
Wow.
The story suggests this gift became his ultimate weapon.
Right.
And fueled the bloody legend of Dracula.
The tone of the narrative shifts dramatically with this second flash fiction story.
Yeah.
Unlike the subtle manipulation and strategic foresight depicted in the Virgin Oracle, the Mind Impaler presents a much more direct and brutal application of perceived insight.
Yeah.
The story immediately establishes Vlad's gaze not just as intimidating, but as an invasion, causing profound fear, not only of physical torture, but of having one's innermost thoughts and secrets laid bare.
Right, and the story describes how his ability didn't manifest as grand visions of the future, but as immediate, almost visceral whispers.
Okay.
The traitorous thoughts of those in his presence.
I see.
A fleeting flicker of resentment,
Right.
a hushed plea for foreign intervention.
Yeah.
Treachery, according to the story, had a rhythm that he could, intuitively sense in the minds of others.
Wow.
What's your take on this more immediate and invasive form of perceived insight?
It creates a fundamentally different dynamic of power compared to the first story.
Yeah.
Instead of anticipating future events, Vlad is presented as having almost instantaneous access to the present intentions and thoughts of those around him.
Right.
This eliminates the need for interpretation, strategic delays, or even outward actions to reveal deceit.
Right.
He seemingly knows their treachery as soon as they think it.
And in this context, punishment, as depicted in the flash fiction story,
Right.
wasn't necessarily about justice
Yeah.
or even deterrence in the traditional sense, but more about like a chillingly precise theater.
Wow.
Each impalement was a chillingly precise answer to a whispered plot.
Oh, wow.
So the merchant who hoarded grain during a famine was impaled overlooking the empty market square.
Oh, my God.
This gruesome spectacle meticulously designed by a mind that already knew his avaricious thoughts.
The imagery in this flash fiction story is indeed a stark and deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
The impaled corpses become a grotesque form of communication.
Right.
A silent but terrifying map that speaks directly to the guilty, or those he perceived as guilty.
Yeah.
It's a reign of terror built not just on physical brutality, but on this perceived absolute knowledge of wrongdoing.
And the story argues that Vlad's true war wasn't fought with conventional armies on battlefields, but with the relentless certainty that no treachery, no matter how secret, would go unnoticed. So the very name Drekel, meaning devil or dragon, wasn't just associated with his monstrous acts, but with the monstrous knowledge he was believed to possess.
I see.
So Wallachia, in this telling, was ruled not by a typical tyrant, but by a specter, with this terrifying, uncanny insight into the minds of his subjects.
This really highlights how the fear of the unknown, of the unseen and unheard, can be an incredibly potent tool of control.
Right.
The idea that the ruler possesses the ability to access your very thoughts creates a pervasive atmosphere of paranoia and forced obedience. Even if the extent of that ability isn't entirely real or consistently applied.
Yeah.
It's the belief in his mind reading that becomes a powerful instrument of his rule in the flash fiction story.
Right. He reveled in the fear, the story states.
Right.
It became his, sustenance more powerful than any material tribute his subjects could offer.
Right.
His court transformed into like a nest of perpetual paranoia.
Wow.
Where absolute silence became the only truly safe recourse.
Yeah.
And this paints a very grim picture of the psychological impact of this perceived mind-reading ability on both the ruler and the ruled.
It suggests a ruler who becomes increasingly isolated and perhaps even loses his grip on reality.
Yeah.
If everyone around you is constantly terrified of their thoughts being exposed and punished, genuine connection, honest counsel,
right,
and even basic trust become utterly impossible.
Right.
This kind of absolute power based on fear of internal exposure can be profoundly corrosive.
Even the mighty Ottoman Empire,
Right.
with their vast and experienced armies,
Right.
reportedly saw him not just as a military opponent, but as a supernatural obstacle.
I see.
Their scouts returned not merely with reports of troop numbers and fortifications, but with chilling tales of this nightmarish forest of the impaled that whispered with the echoes of 1,000 traitorous schemes.
Wow.
The story suggests that their invasion faltered, not solely on the battlefield, but due to a primal fear of this, uncanny ruler and his seemingly magical ability to know their intentions.
That's a remarkably powerful image that the flash fiction story creates.
Yeah.
The sheer psychological impact of Vlad's terrifying reputation, amplified by this aura of mind reading, substantial enough to deter a major military power.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes about the power of myth and legend in shaping not just popular perception, but even significant historical outcomes.
His victories, according to the story, were monstrous, and his rule was ultimately warped by the terrible intimacy of his gift.
Wow.
He saw not just the outward acts of betrayal, but the underlying motivations, the desperation, the envy, the simmering resentment in constantly confronting the darkness within others.
Right.
The narrative suggests he ultimately lost sight of his own humanity and succumbed to a similar darkness.
The flash fiction story raises a profound and disturbing question here.
Yeah.
About the potential toll of such intense and constant exposure to the perceived worst aspects of human nature.
Right.
Does constantly peering into the shadows of others' minds inevitably corrupt the observer?
Yeah.
It's a chilling thought.
It really is, and the flash fiction story even hints that his descent into what some might call madness was perhaps a form of like grim defiance.
I see.
A way to cope with the monstrous clarity of his gift. He embraced the monstrous image because it mirrored the ugliness he believed he saw so clearly in the minds of those around him.
This offers a more nuanced, almost tragic perspective on Vlad's extreme cruelty as depicted in the story. It suggests a man not just reveling in sadism, but perhaps burdened and ultimately broken by this terrifying ability to perceive the hidden thoughts of others.
His end, the flash fiction story recounts, was surprisingly unremarkable. A simple ambush.
Okay.
Yet the enduring legend was born not in his death, but in the shadowed accounts of his reign. Right. In the whispered tales of the impaled and the forests of the dead. Right. Eventually evolving into the enduring myth of Dracula, the monstrous mind reader, the ultimate voyeur of souls. The true horror, the story concludes, lies not just in the rivers of blood, but in the chilling certainty that even the deepest, most secret thoughts of the human mind can be exposed.
The lasting power of the Dracula myth, as you pointed out, truly speaks to this primal and universal fear of being truly known, of having our hidden thoughts and desires laid bare for judgment. It's a far more profound and unsettling form of vulnerability than mere physical harm.
So what have we unearthed in this magical probe into the Virgin Oracle and the Mind Impaler for you.
Right.
In the tale of Elizabeth I,
Mm-hmm.
we saw how the perception of prophetic vision,
Right.
whether, real or skillfully crafted,
Right.
could be an incredibly potent tool for a leader.
Yeah.
Those fleeting glimpses, the scent of danger, they weren't necessarily, clear predictions, but they fueled a heightened state of vigilance and a strategic hesitation that often turned her rivals' impatience against them.
Interesting.
It really makes you consider in any form of leadership how much relies on, genuine insight and how much on the art of projecting an aura of knowing and control.
And then shifting to the grim reality of Vlad Tepes and the Mind Impaler, we encountered a vastly different kind of knowing, the terrifying ability to seemingly access the innermost thoughts of others.
Right.
His brutal impalements weren't portrayed as random acts of cruelty, but as targeted responses to perceived treachery, creating a reign of terror built on the chilling certainty of mental exposure.
Yeah.
This story compels us to confront a much darker question.
Right.
What is the true cost of such intimate, unfiltered knowledge of others' minds?
Right.
And how does it fundamentally warp the character and the actions of the wielder of that power?
Yeah.
The transition from the historical Vlad Tepes to the enduring legend of Dracula highlights how deeply this fear of unseen internal judgment resonates within the human psyche.
Both of these flash fiction stories, though wildly different in their tone and ultimate outcomes, offer really, compelling reflections on the immense power of perceived insight and the fascinatingly diverse strategies employed by individuals facing constant threat and uncertainty. Elizabeth III, masterfully weaponized the idea of knowing the future, while Vlad Tepes chillingly utilized the terrifying impression of knowing the present thoughts of everyone around him.
We certainly hope this magical probe has offered you some intriguing perspectives on these captivating figures and the complex interplay between power and perception.
Right.
What aspects of these tales stood out most to you?
Yeah.
Did either of these figures' methods of wielding their unique gifts, whether real or imagined, particularly surprise you or perhaps even unsettle you?
Yeah.
Perhaps you're now considering the myriad ways in which leaders, both in history and in fiction, have used information, and sometimes just the potent illusion of information to shape their own destinies and the destinies of those they ruled.
That's a great question.
That's certainly something to continue to ponder until our next exploration into the fascinating world of wizarding flash fiction.
Rate and follow the show for more captivating stories. The Mary Potter Podcast.